The appeal of a film like The Biggest Battle, starring Henry Fonda, John Huston, and Stacy Keach, is that it reduces the war film archetype, that kind of great big American war film archetype, not great, but massive in scope American war film archetype, and it reduces it to you as a kid, if you were perhaps, I don't think I necessarily was, not that I wouldn't have, but playing with like toy soldiers and tanks and things like that. Not quite a video game war film, you understand. Video games weren't really that advanced yet. This is like the era of Pong, we're talking like 78. So we're talking about the toy soldiers' interpretation of a war epic action picture. That's what The Biggest Battle is. I guess Lenzi was able to secure some big name American actors and put them in this film for small portions of the runtime, and then the rest of it's just... Apparently a lot of the action is stock footage from older war films. I couldn't necessarily... There's nothing I immediately thought, oh, that's from that, although... Because, well, partly because I was kind of... If they were from one of Lenzi's previous films, I may have picked it up easier, but I think the Desert Commandos and Legion of the Damned, I don't think he used any footage from those ones here. I think it's more other Macaroni combat pictures he was stealing from. At least steal from your own films, dude. That's just a bit more tasteful. That's the appeal of the Macaroni combat in general. It's the action figure equivalent of traditional American war films, and they're more feasible and viable as action films as a result. There's a certain kind of playful, ha-ha quality to them, that post-World War II religion of we won the war, which the Western world was reared on instead of Christianity. That kind of media mythology that gets summarized into really kind of non-Samuel Fuller pictures, non-Steel Helmet. Sam Fuller tried to take that he was a vet, he tried to take that sort of thing seriously. This is the opposite. Umberto Lenzi, I'm assuming, did not participate in the war, and if he had, I'm sure that, if you were under fascist Italy, you were well aware that none of this garbage was worth it. Let's not glorify it. Except he did. I guess Lenzi's just creating action slop for a buck. I don't know how much you can call this a pro-war attitude, although I guess I'm building that. Is it this time? I suppose they didn't think, Vietnam was over, it was 75, so they figured, okay, we're not going to have any more major wars. It's the end of history now. Finally, it wasn't, but it never has been. It wasn't even the end of history in 1990 when Fukuyama claimed it could be. I guess that's the whole thing. I was listening to a talk recently. It's Zizek and some other gentleman talking about Hegel, of course. If you find that entertaining, and actually Zizek, so that can make a lot of things entertaining, to be fair. Now, they're talking about how Hegel's theorization of... Yeah, we're getting into Hegel and Umberto Lenzi. Just hear me out. That theorization of the end of history... It's ideal, it's desirable, because we can get to a point where we go, we don't have to worry anymore. We can just relax the rest of the time and watch Rambo or whatever. That's what some people in the later 2000s thought. I remember, people older than me, Gen Xers and stuff, who'd grown up. Or not. Then again, I don't know if anyone in Generation X grew up. Too much MTV. Anyway, the point is, Fukuyama proposed in 1990, after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union, that... this was the end of history. And in the end of history, perhaps we could look at the history of war and just talk about it as was, as though we talk about, the exploits of Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan, the early Muslim conquests, without it being kind of a political issue. We can just look at the history of, say, the war in the Pacific without it being, a glorification or a call to arms for any aggression in future. Now, it's difficult to witness and view and produce these sorts of films in an airtight vacuum, history being what it is, which is never ending. I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where we can just enjoy, shamelessly war films as action slop. Maybe we ought never. Although, in a perspective, late 70s, end of history, when everyone sincerely thought that, I guess there were Cold War fears at that time, but assuming it was all going to, just hopefully blow over, or nuclear winter wasn't going to be so bad, I guess there was a certain solace in just reflecting on the fact that America won World War II for the rest of history. It was something. Given the final scene of John Huston's character in this film, I'm inclined to think that Umberto Lenzi had some sensitivity to how ugly and anticlimactic and potentially uncinematic and unromantic war can be. It's a thought. Slop, fast food, action figure trash, but if you are in the mood for that sort of thing, it's fun to have on in the background for some sort of novelty, simple-minded. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and you can just enjoy it as a depiction of World War II European theatre imagery without it being, attempting to be a simulation of PTSD like a modern war film would. Not that they ought to make war films more like this now. Perhaps we ought to get to a point where we're just not making them for a little while because they're just, who really wants to watch? It's like we had, 1917, but then we also had, there's a World War II picture by Mel Gibson, Hacksaw Ridge, and then there was also Dunkirk, that's World War II, but then there was a couple World War One films. I remember War Horse some years ago. It's just like, and they're all the same film. They're all just trying to outdo each other. They're all just trying to be the best film of a fairly narrow paradigm of big battle sequences and someone kind of elbowing you in the shoulder while you're sitting in the cinema. Isn't this effective? You're meant to be feeling this right now. You're meant to be feeling that right now. Let the film speak for itself. Damn it, Saving Private Ryan. Look what you've done. Well-meaning, but look what you've done. Actually, we could blame Oliver Stone's Platoon for this, which I hate to say because Oliver Stone was a veteran, although I feel like the film Platoon he took his experiences in that war and put them into a cliche mold of American Hollywood war film. And ironically, it was Kubrick's film which felt more true to life. Not that I was in Vietnam, fortunately, but I just, if you had to ask me, which film do you think would reflect more so the experience of being in the Vietnam War as an American soldier, I suspect it would be the one that feels more like a fly-on-the-wall film rather than the sentimental screenplay about a character portrayed by Charlie Sheen, that's all. Sorry, Oliver Stone. I really do apologise. You can feel free to attack me, call me a piece of garbage and all that. I know it'll make you feel better, because if it does, I'd lose respect for you anyway, but that's besides the point. Actually, not really. Anyway, Umberto, Lenzi, The Biggest Battle. I find it fun in certain context, honestly. To a point. You might be wondering why the screen caps are so elongated. Well, I attempted to speed up this film like I did for the recent License to Kill upload. For whatever reason, this film just wasn't having it. I don't know. And so I just took some last-minute screen caps and stretched them out, perhaps lazily. Feel free to complain.